anyone is facing any voice related issue, if you're facing any audio related issue, I would request you to please rejoin the session once. If anyone I'll allow 1 minute. I'll allow 1 minute everyone to quickly rejoin. I'll hold the session for 1 minute. If you're facing any voice related issue, audio related issue, I would request you to please quickly rejoin the session. All right. Has everyone rejoined the session? Can I move forward? Am I audible to all the folks who had some voice related issue, audio related issue? Is my voice coming through clear to all of you? Fantastic. Thank you so much for that confirmation. Then let's move forward. Let's get started with our today's session. So yesterday we understood what is region, what is availability zone. So now moving a bit forward, talking about the next part of discussion, which is why do we have minimum 2 availability zones in a region? Yesterday, remember I told you that in any AWS region, there should be minimum 2 availability zones. So we'll understand why we require bare minimum 2 availability zones in a region. The reason why we require minimum 2 availability zone is for the purpose of high availability. Now, when I say high availability, please understand very clearly. Now, if I take Mumbai as a region, in Mumbai region, there are 3 different availability zones. So these 3 different availability zones are 3 different data centers of AWS, which are located some 100 miles away from each other. It's not that AWS have 3 physical data centers next to each other in Mumbai. That's not the case at all. These data centers are located some 100 miles away from each other, right? Now, why this 100 miles away from each other? Because in case if there is any natural calamity, in case if there is any natural disaster, man-made disaster, right? So if one of the location is impacted, it will ensure that other locations are up and running. To ensure your business is up and running, AWS have, deployed 3 different availability zones under one region right now. Right now, majority of AWS region have bare minimum 3 availability zones, right? But the default definition that for it to be called as a region, there should be minimum 2 availability zone. The minimum 2 number is because we wanted to ensure there is a high availability. So when I say high availability, please understand, as an organization, as a business, if I want to ensure my business is up and running always, if one of the availability zone goes down, it should not impact my business. So for that purpose, I have a choice. I can deploy my infrastructure in multiple availability zones. or in multiple region. So deploying in multiple availability zones or multiple region will come with a cost. It is not for free, but that will help me increase fault tolerance. It will help me increase redundancy. It will reduce latency for my infrastructure. If I want to deploy in more than one availability zone, it will come with a cost, and AWS will not do that replication. I will have to manually ensure that this replication is taking place. It would not be AWS responsibility. As far as AWS is concerned, AWS says that we can give you provision, we can give you the choice. Now, opting for deploying in multiple region or multiple availability zone is completely your responsibility. If you want high availability, deploy your infrastructure in multiple regions or multiple availability zones, and accordingly, you should be willing to pay for it. Accordingly, you should be willing to pay for it. And now also I want to tell you one more thing. These availability zones are logically interconnected with each other using a fiber optic link. Availability zones within a region are logically interconnected using a fiber optic link with a throughput of around 25 to 30 terabytes per second with a latency of around 1 millisecond to 2 milliseconds. Now this fiber optic link is what will help us to replicate our infrastructure across availability zones. Remember, it's only availability zones which are logically interconnected, not your regions. Every region is independent from every other region. Okay. So this way, if you deploy your infrastructure in multiple availability zone, it will ensure fault tolerance, low latency, higher availability. Low latency and higher availability. Do we have to pay more? As I was telling, yes, it will come with additional cost. It is not for free. Now, why should an organization consider high availability as an essential component? So there could be some environment related issues like earthquake, flooding, which should not impact your whole system. There could be some hardware related issues, power outage, hardware failures, all of that should not impact your business. Software related issues, software may, crash unexpected. Your data can become, inaccessible, data can get corrupted, right? Network related issue, there could be some network outages and all of that. So to avoid running into any of this situation and to ensure your business is up and running 24/7, 365 days, right, it is always recommended that you deploy your infrastructure in multiple availability zone, right? Even in our on-premises, we used to deploy our infrastructure in two data centers. One was acting as your primary data center, another one was acting as your backup data center. Yes or no? We call that as a DC-DR setup. Yes? Do you all agree with this? Even in our on-premises, we had our infrastructure deployed in similar fashion, and we call that as a DC-DR setup. So DC would act as your primary data center, and DR would be your disaster recovery data center. So if anything goes wrong with your DC, then you auto switch over all your traffic from your DC to your DR. That's a general practice. So I want to ask you, does your DR not come with additional cost, or is it for free? Obviously, it will come with additional cost, right? The same logic applies in the cloud. If you want high availability, you pay for it. There is nothing different. Right? So this is what I was talking about. So more the availability, more the price. You can deploy your infrastructure. You can deploy your infrastructure in one region. Within region, you can host it in multiple availability zone. Or in one region, one availability zone, you can have same server replicated. That is within availability zone, high availability. But if the entire availability zone goes down, then your business would be down. So you can, opt to host it in multiple availability zone. If one availability zone goes down, the other one is still available, right? Now, if entire region goes down, right, then your business might go down if you're deployed only in one region. So you can deploy in multiple region. So if you're deployed in multiple region, again, it will ensure higher availability, right? Now, if entire AWS goes down for that purpose, you can deploy in one more cloud vendor like Azure or Google or something like that. So higher the availability, more the cost. The logic is that simple. More the availability you want, more the cost you should be willing to pay for it. What do the numbers 1, 2, 3 denote here? It's nothing but the server's number of servers you're deploying. Single server, 2 servers, 3 server, 4 server. So it is showing how high availability can be achieved using this. These numbers are only referring to number of servers. Are we clear, everyone? If entire AWS is down, will AWS be responsible for downtime of the business? There would be an SLA associated. So when you say AWS responsible, so it is about the SLA I think you're referring to. So obviously with every AWS service, there is an SLA associated, service level agreement. In service level agreement, there is clearly called out how much of availability is what AWS offers or promises. So in case if the SLA clauses are breached, AWS would be liable to pay you the penalty. Are we clear? Cool. So now coming back to one more point here. Okay, when we were talking about region, I wanted to discuss this part. Yesterday we did not discuss, so I thought of discussing this right now. Right? When we talk about region, how to choose a right region? How to choose a right region? Because AWS have around 25 regions currently. So how do I ensure which region is right for my business? So while choosing a region, there are certain parameters that you need to take into consideration. The very first thing which you need to consider is latency. The very first thing which you need to consider is latency, right? You need to know, if I am deploying my infrastructure in so and so region, what is the latency that I will have for my business? What is the latency that I will have for my business? So latency is one of the factor. Latency is nothing but the time taken for the traffic to reach from source to destination and from destination to back to source, right? That is referred as latency. So you need to consider latency. Now when I say latency, understand very clearly more in detail here. It is about, let's assume, okay, I'll put it on the world map rather than on the screen. Let's assume that I'm an organization xyz.com. Let's assume that I'm an organization xyz.com. I have my users from America, but I'm as an organization, I'm based out of Australia, headquarters in Australia. So if I host my infrastructure in Australia, right? So can I say that every time the user traffic has to travel all the way from America to Australia? Yes or no? Yes or no? Do you all agree? Every time user is trying to access something, the traffic has to flow all the way from America to Australia. Now when the traffic has to flow from America to Australia, can I say it would introduce some latency? Right? So do you think it makes sense when you have your users based out of America? Does it make sense to keep your infrastructure in Australia? No. So ideal cases, while choosing a region, you need to ensure where your users are located, and always ensure your infrastructure is hosted closer to your user. It would have made more sense if all my users are based out of America, right? If all my users are based out of America, it would have made more sense if I would have hosted my infrastructure in America itself. Agree with me? Always ensure your infrastructure is closer to your users. Your infrastructure is closer to your users so that you have minimum latency, right? So then you have the next part, service availability. Now it is very important, before you decide which region to go with, you need to check the services which are needed for my business application to function normally. Are those services available in this particular region? For example, let's assume that I want to host an application ABC which requires 5G connectivity. Now, if I choose Mumbai region, will it make sense? I have an application ABC which requires 5G connectivity. That is a prerequisite for that application to function normally, right? So if I host that infrastructure in Mumbai region, will it make sense? No, it would not. Why no? Because in India, in Mumbai region, we still don't have 5G connectivity. Yes or no? So before you deploy your infrastructure, ensure there is a proper service availability. And before you choose your region, ensure all the services which are needed for your infrastructure to function normally, are those services available in this particular region of AWS. We already talked about user or customer location. So moving on to next part, which is security and compliance requirement. When I say security and compliance requirement, please understand very clearly. At times when you're hosting your infrastructure, there are certain government rules and regulations which you need to take into consideration. For example, in Europe, there is a compliance telling GDPR. Now, as per this GDPR compliance, the data of European users should not move out of Europe. That is the requirement. Yes or no? If you have European users, right, the data of those European users should not move out of Europe. It should be hosted within Europe, right? So no matter if the infrastructure cost in India is lower, still you cannot host that infrastructure out of Europe. Am I making sense? You need to adhere by law of land, sorry. You need to adhere by law of land. So please check what are the security, compliance and other requirements that you need to go through before deciding which region to go with. Then pricing. Obviously, this is the last factor which you need to take into consideration. Why I'm telling last factor? Because if all the technical factors are considered, it could be possible that, even if the other location is offering the infrastructure at a lower cost, you cannot host it in other location because of the first four factors, right? So let me tell you, the cost of hosting is different in different regions. It is because the cost of land, the cost of labor, the government taxation, all of that varies from location to location. The cost of land or the cost of labor in India is different. The cost of labor in Singapore is different. So obviously the cost of hosting your infrastructure in different region would vary. Are we all clear with this? How to choose a right region? Are we all clear? So you need to take into consideration these 5 factors while choosing a region. So now moving a bit forward, talking about the next part of discussion, right? Which is your AWS Direct Connect location and local zones. AWS Direct Connect locations and local zones. Understand what is your Direct Connect location. So Direct Connect locations are when you have part of your infrastructure in on-premises. Let's assume that I'm an organization xyz.com. I have part of my infrastructure put up in my on-premises, and remaining infrastructure is put up in my cloud. Okay. Now understand very clearly. If I want my on-premise infrastructure, when I say on-premise infrastructure, I'm referring to server or the application hosted in my on-premise, want to integrate with my cloud, want to exchange information with my cloud infrastructure, right? In that case, in that case, normally, can I say the traffic will flow via general internet? Yes or no? In a normal scenario, I will establish a VPN connectivity between my on-premise and cloud infrastructure, and the traffic will flow via internet. So when traffic flows via internet, can I say it will go via multiple hops? Agree with me on this? So if the traffic is going via multiple hops, can I say that would introduce some latency? Yes. Understand the scenario, guys. Pay attention. Understand this very clearly. I have part of my infrastructure in on-premise, part of my infrastructure in cloud. Now my on-premise infrastructure has to exchange some information with my cloud infrastructure. So obviously, for the purpose of connectivity, I have established a VPN connectivity from my on-premise towards the cloud, right? Now, when the traffic is flowing via this VPN connectivity, it has to go via general internet. And when the traffic goes via general internet, there are multiple hops in between. Since there are multiple hops in between, it would introduce a latency. It will introduce huge amount of latency, which you might not want to go ahead with, right? So to avoid those running into those kind of situation, AWS has a service called as Direct Connect. Now, Direct Connect is not available across all the locations. It is only available in certain locations of AWS currently. Okay. So as a part of your Direct Connect, what happens is, let's assume if this is your on-premise infrastructure and this is your cloud infrastructure, the traffic does not have to go via general internet via multiple hops. It says from your on-premises directly forward traffic to your internet service provider, and from your internet service provider it will directly reach your cloud infrastructure. So it would be a single hop connectivity. So when the traffic does not have to go via multiple hops, can I say it reduces the latency? It is like having your own private line. If I have to tell you, private lease line. Are we all clear what is your direct connect location? Everyone? Now talking about the next part of discussion, which is your local zones. Okay. Obviously, this will come with a cost. It is not for free. This will involve additional commercials. If you want such a, greater throughput, right? If you want a greater throughput, obviously it will come with a cost. Could you please explain what are general hops for the traffic? So when the traffic has to go via multiple internet hops, that is what we call it as general hops, Vinith. Now, to help you understand what is hop, right? You open your command prompt, okay? Say trace route. Sorry, right? This is Windows. Okay. Trace RT facebook.com, right? So it will show you number of hops it takes from my machine to reach facebook.com. From my machine, I've initiated traffic from my machine and I want to reach facebook.com. So number of hops, if you notice earlier it was 2 milliseconds, then 5 milliseconds, 6 milliseconds, now 9 milliseconds. So can I say there is a latency at every hop level? This is what we call it as general internet hop. So it takes how many hops from my machine to reach facebook.com? Around 8 hops. Around 8 hops. So that is what we are referring to as latency. So in every hop it is adding, let's assume that 669, 669. This, if you sum up, that is the overall latency. Are we all clear? What do I mean when I say hops? Yes? Cool. So now talking about local zones. Now talking about local zones. Local zones is nothing but in certain locations. Okay, in certain locations, AWS did not have full-fledged region. It did not have AWS did not have complete region, right? So in those locations, AWS decided to set up a smaller infrastructure, which is not as complex as region, which does not have all the functionality as your region. Okay, but a small infrastructure, a minimal setup, right? Which provides set of core services. Like remember yesterday I was telling you AWS provides around 175 plus services, right? So if it is the region, all those 175 plus services are available. But I'm talking about those locations where AWS currently does not have a full-fledged region, right? In those locations, AWS wanted to have their footprints established. They wanted to ensure that they don't lose business from those locations. So what AWS did is they deployed a smaller setup that is called as local zones. These local zones have some core services of AWS. When I say core services, like your compute, your storage, your network, which are very basic services which are needed for any business to run their businesses, which are needed for any organization to run their businesses. So those are referred as local zones. Are we all clear? Everyone, can I move forward? Great. So now talking about the next part of discussion, which is your point of presence location of AWS. Now, what is this point of presence location? Now, what is this point of presence location? Understand very clearly. But before I talk about, can you repeat again on availability zone? You mean the last part which I was talking about? It is not your availability zone, it is your local zone. Availability zone is something which we discussed yesterday. You want local zones. Local zones are nothing but a small zone level configuration or zone level infrastructure of AWS. A small setup. Local zones are not exactly part of your region. If you notice, where no AWS region exists, that is where AWS have set up local zones mainly. Now, in future, when there are regions deployed over there, okay, when AWS announces regions in those locations, local zone is also continued. Please understand very clearly. I'll make it very simple for all of you to understand. Okay, understand very simply. Now, there are certain brands. Let's forget technical for a moment. Let's talk in very layman language, right? There are certain products, certain brands which cannot have their offices across the globe. Yes or no? Let's take any XYZ product. They cannot have their offices across the globe, but they wanted to reach across the world. They wanted to ensure their product is available across the globe, but we cannot have our headquarters or we cannot have our dedicated offices across the globe. So what they do is they kind of set up a distributor system. Yes or no? They would have someone dedicated distributor to whom they will send their products, and that distributor will ensure the product is available to all the users in that particular location. Yes, agree with me? The local zone is kind of similar to that. AWS does not have full-fledged region in that location, but AWS wanted to ensure that they are not losing business. They are not losing business. They wanted to ensure they have their footprint, right, in those locations also. So what they did is, setting up entire region requires a huge amount of money. So AWS said, okay, if not entire full-fledged budget, let us just spend a small portion of our budget and set up some small location so that we can attract some customers from those locations as well. in future, once the budget is approved, right, we'll set up a full-fledged infrastructure in those locations and we'll make it as a region. Are we all clear what is your local zones now? What about direct connect location? Are they existing in region or it is just in, local zones? It is available in regions. It is available in regions, but not across all the regions again. Because setting up all of this requires a lot of cost, right? So slowly and gradually, depending on the business demands, right, AWS is developing this. Are we clear? Can I move forward, guys? Thank you. So now talking about point of presence location or POP location. Point of presence location or your POP location. Now, what is your POP location? Please understand very clearly. How many of you guys are aware of CDN? Content Delivery Networking. How many of you guys are aware of what is CDN? No? Okay. Okay. Quite a few people are aware. Majority says not aware. All right, not a problem. So let's understand what is your concept of CDN, and then we'll talk about what is your point of presence location or your POP location, right? So let's assume that I'm an organization xyz.com. I have around 70% of my users in Australia, okay? And I have around, 30% of my users from America. As an organization, I'm headquarters in India, right? So help me understand, as an organization, where should I be hosting my data center? Which region should I be choosing to host my infrastructure? I have 70% of my users in Australia, 30% of users in America. As a business, I'm headquarters in India. So which region should I be choosing to host my infrastructure? If I have to choose only one region, I don't have budget for two regions. Then in that case, obviously everyone would say that, Australia is a location which I should be choosing. Agree with me? Because I have 70% of my users located in Australia. So I should ensure that, wherever my majority of users are, right, that is where I should set up my infrastructure. So I went ahead and I set up my infrastructure in Australia. I went ahead and I did set up my infrastructure in Australia. Now, setting up infrastructure in Australia did help, and all my users from Australia were confirming that, they are able to observe good performance. They are able to experience better performance, lower latency, higher throughput, and all of this, right? They're able to enjoy all of this. Okay. But my users from America, they started complaining of latency. My users from America started complaining of latency. Now, if the users from America are complaining of latency, it is because the traffic has to travel all the way from, America to Australia, to and fro. Agree with me? Yes or no? Since the traffic has to travel all the way from America to Australia and then reverse, right? And go back from Australia to America, vice versa, right? So this will definitely introduce something called as latency. Yes. So all my American users started complaining of latency, throughput related problem, your performance related problem, and all of that. They started complaining all of this, right? So if I had to fix this issue, if I have to address the concerns of my American users, how do I address that concern? So one of the choice was I consider hosting my infrastructure in Australia also. Sorry, in America also. I consider hosting my infrastructure in America also. Yes or no? That is one of the choice. But hosting an infrastructure in one more region, can I say it will double my cost? I'll have to pay for additional manpower, management, maintenance, obviously additional cost for the infrastructure setup and all of that, right? And also I cannot choose in any other region, like I cannot choose in India, I cannot choose in Europe and all of that. The reason being, the reason being that will also somewhere lead to latency related problem, because we tried setting up in India, and yes, my users confirmed that, even Australian users said, the performance is not as good as it was when the infrastructure was hosted in Australia. So I cannot choose to host it in other regions also, right? Somewhere half the way, midpoint, something like that. But no, nothing worked out. So how do I fix this problem when I don't want to spend money? I don't want to spend additional cost of setting up entire data center, right? That huge budget I don't have. So in that case, right, we have a concept of CDN which will come into our help. The concept of CDN says what? If you have infrastructure, if you have users across multiple locations, right? Obviously, you cannot set up infrastructure across multiple locations. So you do one thing in a location like America currently, where you have lower number of users, right? You set up something called as content delivery networking. In AWS, we call that as a edge location or your POP location. You configure something called as edge location or POP location. Now, what this edge location or POP location will do, please try to understand very clearly. Next time, if there is a user from America who says www.xyz.com, the traffic will go via this edge location. Okay. This HTTP GET request for xyz.com is cached in this edge location. And the traffic will reach the data center in Australia. And the response when it comes back, that is also cached in this edge location. And the response is given to the user for the first time, right? So now for www.xyz.com, in the edge location, there is a content already cached. So now when there is a next user who says www.xyz.com, right? Do you think the traffic will flow all the way from America to Australia now? No. Now the traffic will not move all the way from America to Australia. Rather, it would be delivered from the local edge location or POP location, from the cache itself. This is what we call it as CDN. So obviously, can I say now, when the data is being served, from the edge location or the cache location, can I say it will reduce the latency? Yes or no? Obviously, that latency related problem is addressed. It is only for the first time when the data is not available in the cache. That time the traffic will move from your location to edge location. Are we clear? Mervin, any doubts? No, we are clear then. Awesome, thank you. So this edge location or this POP location uses the underlying technology called as CDN, content delivery networking. Are we all clear? Your edge and POP location, they are same. I'll tell you. Earlier, AWS called them as edge location. Now they have changed it to POP location. Okay. Your POP location is what they call it now. Earlier, it was referred to as edge location. What all infos are stored in your edge location? Only your web cache. Only your web caching, your HTTP, HTTPS cache. It is not your full-fledged data center where you can store any information. No, it is not a dedicated storage. It is not a dedicated infrastructure where you can deploy your servers and something like that. No, it is completely managed service by AWS, where you can enable to cache your resources. Right? Are we all clear? So by using this edge location, POP location, you can avoid the need of having a full-fledged dedicated data center. Okay, full-fledged region. Sorry, right? Setting up full-fledged region. Now, what kind of organization uses this? Organization like your Amazon Prime, organization like Netflix, right? YouTube. They use this kind of setups. Why? Because they have users across the globe. They have their users across the globe. But just because they have users across the globe, they cannot have their infrastructure hosted in multiple regions. Agree with me? So to reduce the cost, they go ahead and use this kind of concepts. Now remember, your edge location, your POP location are only suitable for your static content, not for your dynamic content. Now, what is dynamic content? Prashant, video file is a dynamic file. How many feel this? On Amazon Prime, if I'm seeing a movie, it's a dynamic. How many of you guys consider that as a dynamic data? That is not your dynamic. That is your static file. Okay. When I say dynamic data, I'm referring to live cricket match, live football match, your stock exchanges. All those are your dynamic data. Are we all clear? So your edge location is suitable only for your static content, not your dynamic content. If you have dynamic kind of application, then you don't have a choice. You'll have to set up a region. So I was talking about the latency. I told you from client to server, server to client. This is what we measure as a latency. And AWS has its clients throughout the world. So to reduce latency and avoid load on the server, they use edge location. As I was telling you earlier, this was called as edge location. Now they've changed it to POP location. POP location are nothing but your point of presence location. These are all small setup in different locations where AWS caches the content and delivers it quickly to end users. So as of September 2020, AWS had around 217 point of presence location across the globe. They had how many? 217 point of presence location, which included 205 edge location and 12 regional edge caches. So in 12 region, they had a dedicated infrastructure for this, right? 12 regions where they had a dedicated infrastructure for this, that was referred to as regional edge caches. In other location, they have set up this, so they call those location as edge location. Are we all clear? We have demo for this. So as we progress into course, I'll show you demo for this also, don't worry. So now moving a bit forward, why edge location is needed, I think I've already addressed this. And we can cache data to the POP location near to end user using AWS CloudFront. CloudFront is the name of the service on AWS. Okay. Does edge location call regional edge caches? No. These are all independent locations. They're not interconnected, interdependent kind of thing. Okay. They're not interdependent kind of setup. So with this, we complete our first module. Now, there is a small task which I want you guys to do. How many of you guys have your AWS account created? Okay, good if you already have it. but please ensure it is the latest one. Okay. In case if you don't remember, if it is like, older than 1 year, then you will be charged. I don't want you to go ahead and use that old account. In case if you are not sure when did you create your AWS account, then I would request you to create a new account for yourself. Just use a different email address and create a new account. In case if you don't have your AWS account created at all, in that case, I would request you to create one for yourself. How to create your AWS account, right? I'll tell you. I believe all of you guys have access to your LMS portal, learning.edureka.co portal. Yes or no? You must have received your credential to log into this portal, right? So in this portal, if you say my batches, right? If you say my batch, so in your batch, right? In your batch, you have your course content. Under course content, you have your module 1. Now in module 1, you will find a document telling demo sign up AWS account. Demo sign up to AWS account, right? Or I'm sharing you this URL. Please check if you're able to open it on your browsers. So in this particular document, you have step-by-step, details about how to go about creating a AWS free tier account. All you need to say is https aws.amazon.com/console. There you will find a page like this. You'll have an option called create free account. So please follow this step-by-step details along with the screenshot, right? And create an AWS account for yourself before you come back for your tomorrow's session. Is that clear to everyone? Those who have old account but you don't remember how old it is, then my request would be to create a new account, because in case if your account is older than 1 year, right, you'll be unnecessarily charged, and I don't want to pay for something which is available for free. I don't want you guys to pay for something which is available for free. So this would not take a long amount of time. It is as simple as creating your Facebook account, right? So once you have your AWS account created, right, all you have to do is say aws.amazon.com, and you can say sign into the console, right? The moment you say sign into the console, once your account is created, it will ask for your email address, say root user, and it will ask for your email address. Provide your email address. Then it will ask for your credential. So I'm just freezing my screen for a moment. I'm providing my details here. It will ask for your details, that is your credentials. Provide those details and log into your AWS account, right? And let me tell you, your login experience would be very much similar like how you log into your Facebook account, right? On when you want to access your Facebook account, you say www.facebook.com. Yes or no? On your browser, you say www.facebook.com, and you provide your email address and your password, and you're allowed to log into your facebook.com, right? Similarly, when you want to log into your AWS infrastructure, you're pretty much doing the same job. You say www.aws.amazon.com, right? Provide your sign in details and you're allowed to log in. Once you log in, this is what your AWS dashboard will look like. So these are 175 plus services which we were referring in our yesterday's session. So you have various technologies. You have all these services available here in the AWS. You have compute, customer enablement, machine learning, front-end, web and mobile, AR, VR, application integration, blockchain, satellite technology, quantum technology, storage, database management and governance, AWS cost management, business application, analytics, your migration and transfer, networking and content delivery, media services, security, identity and compliance, end user computing, Internet of Things, game development, containers, developers tool, robotics. So these are around 175 plus services which are offered by AWS. Now someone was asking me, is deployment and development, are they same? So is this answering your question? You have different set of services for your developers. So these are your developer tools, which is purely to do with your DevOps, right? Your CI, CD and all of that. And deployment is different part. Are we clear? Whose question was that? I'm sorry, I don't recall. But someone in the beginning asked me this question today. So is that question addressed? Yes? Cool. And apart from that, we were talking about regions. So I informed you that you can choose a region of your choice, right? So here it is. So these are those 25 regions currently which are up and running of AWS. You have region in North Virginia, that is US East, you are in Ohio, North California, Oregon, Cape Town, Hong Kong, Mumbai, Osaka, Seoul, Singapore, Sydney, Tokyo, Central, Canada Central, Frankfurt, Ireland, London, Milan, Paris, Stockholm, Bahrain, Sao Paulo, right? So these are different regions of AWS, right? Now, since we have 175 plus services, Prashant, are we gonna learn all the 175 plus services? No, we are not gonna learn all the 175 plus services. We are gonna focus on the list of those services which are important from your exam point of view. Now, AWS in itself is kind of an ocean, right? So we'll not be discussing everything. We'll not be talking about machine learning. We'll not be talking about application internet, integration, IoT, quantum technology, all of that we'll not be discussing, right? AWS in itself is an ocean, right? So we will focus on list of those services which are important from your exam point of view. We'll have demo for those services only which are important from exam point of view. Are we all clear? So I want to set up this expectation right in our today's session itself, so that we don't have any confusions. So if there are certain demos and something which I'm focusing on, that is purely from exam point of view. Yes. Now when you access your AWS infrastructure from your browser, that is referred to as management console access. That is referred to as management console access. Okay. That means what? You can access your AWS infrastructure via multiple methods. Okay. You can access AWS infrastructure via multiple methods. One is using your browser, other is via using your command line, right? You have AWS CLI using SDKs. So that is referred to as your programmatic access. That is referred to as your programmatic access. Are we all clear? Okay. Now a couple of people have this question. Prashant, the services which we are going to discuss, will that be good enough for us to get a job in the market? Will that be all that we should focus on? Or is it only from the exam point of view? So let me tell you, the services which we are going to discuss, which we are going to focus, will be good enough for you to switch your jobs, for you to get a good hike, for you to get a better paying jobs, for you to get a better positions in the industry. Okay. Because when we talk about AWS solution architect, we are going to discuss about a lot of services which will talk about your compute, storage, database, networking, your deployment, all of that. Okay. So that would give you, a lot of information for you to be qualified to get our relevant jobs in the industry. Are we all good with that? Everyone. So trust me, as informed earlier also, your exam related discussion, your interview related discussion, all of that, we will schedule it in our last session. Okay, stay along with me, and I'm very sure, throughout this course, I will ensure by the end of this course, by the end of this course, you'll have all the required information and knowledge for you to switch your jobs. Okay, so we'll talk about, what are different job roles which you can apply for, what are the roles and responsibility for different job roles. All of that we will discuss in our last session. For now, if I may ask one thing from all of you, I would like to ask you, please focus on learning this subject well. Keep your interview, keep your jobs, all of that thoughts aside for, first 14 sessions, right? And in the last session, you yourself will feel the differences. You yourself will say, yes, I feel confident. Now I'm confident enough that I can easily crack any job interview, right? So for first 14 session, I would just ask your request to be hungry to learn something new. In our last session, I'll give you detailed guidance about various things, not only related to your AWS part, about how to prepare your resume. Okay, I'll tell you how to build your resume so that you get more relevant job calls. So I'll give you some tips and tricks around that as well. So trust me, I would give you all the detailed guidance needed. But for that, I would request you to park your trust onto me. Okay, so that we can first learn the subject efficiently, and then we focus on exam interview and all of that. Can I have that from all of you? Yes. Thank you so much for parking your trust onto me, right? And I'll ensure that you don't regret. Rest assured, you will not regret that. Cool. So now quickly starting with our module 2. Quickly starting with our module 2 discussion, right? Now let us do one thing. Let us do slightly different in the sequence. Let us slightly alter our sequence here, because module 2 will require a lot of technical jargons which you're still not introduced to. So I would like to start with module 3 today, right? Post completing our module 3, we'll complete our module 4. Post that, we will start with our module 2. Is that fine? I'm slightly changing the sequence so that you can easily understand this subject well. Is that fine with everyone? Or even after completing our first 5 modules, I mean module 1, module 2, module 1, module 3, module 4, module 5, we can cover our module 2, right? So I feel that sequence would be much better. So maybe we'll go in that sequence. We'll go in that sequence so that all of you have a better, comfortable zone with the technical jargons which we are going to use in our module 2, right? So let's start with our module 3 today. Guys, those quiz and all of that are for you to practice. We'll not be discussing quiz and all of that in our sessions. Okay, quiz and other stuff are completely for you to practice on your own, right? So it's okay, like once you are prepared, you can take those quiz. It's not mandatory that right after your module 1 is completed, you have to take your module 1 quiz, right? You can take your own sweet time, but ensure you practice them so that you get to understand where you are lagging. Because if you attempt your module 1 quiz, there are a lot of questions which we might have not discussed so far, right? So don't get panicked. This quiz the difficulty level is kept pretty high so that you get the seriousness of this course. Okay, they're not easy to clear your quiz. You will hardly get 4 or 5 questions right out of 10. But don't lose your confidence there, right? So it's absolutely okay. And I know this quiz and all of this comes with certain timelines. Don't worry on that. That is not gonna have any kind of impact. Is that fine? It's not going to impact your grades on AWS course certification or anything, right? So starting with our module 3, which is your object storage options on AWS, right? Now, as part of this module, we are going to talk about storage on AWS. Now, I want to understand in general, what is storage according to you? In very layman language, if you have to define storage, what is storage according to all of you? Container, okay. To store, it's a provision to keep your data or files, storing information, okay. I agree. Storage is usually considered to be a place where you, or a place or a space where you keep your data, right? Storage is usually a space where you keep your data, where you store your data. Now, that does not complete the definition of storage. That does not complete the definition of storage. Let me tell you what exactly storage is. Storage is nothing but a space where you store your data, which can be accessed in future whenever you require. This completes the definition of storage. You should be able to retrieve that information back point in time whenever you need. Are we clear what is your storage? Definitely it is a space where you store your data, information, all of that. Whenever you want, you should be able to retrieve that information. That is what we call it as storage. Now, what are different types of storage which you guys are aware of? What are different types of storage which you guys are aware of? Drives, four different types of storage, okay. Let's be quick. DB storage, NFS, okay. Long term, short term, okay. Somewhere closer. The answer long term and short term is somewhere closer. So let me tell you the technical term for that. There are only two types of storages. You have something called as hot storage. You have something called as cold storage. Have you guys heard of something called as hot storage and cold storage? Yes, no. Hot and cold. There are only two types of storage. Hot, H-O-T, and C-O-L-D, cold. Hot and cold. These are two different types of storage options which are available. And all your storage devices like your pen drive, your hard disk, your SSD, your tapes, your floppy, all of this fall in either of this category. Now, what is your hot storage? What is your cold storage? Understand very clearly. A data which is to be accessed very frequently. Every now and then when you access your data, which you want to retrieve very frequently, those kind of data is stored in your hot storages. Okay. Frequently accessed data, right? Or all your live data, you keep it in your hot storage. Now, infrequently accessed data which you access once in a blue moon day, once in 1 year, once in 5 years, those kind of data which you want to store and you want to have retrieval in future, those kind of data is stored in your cold storage. Okay. Now let's talk about how things worked in your traditional, that is in your on-premises, and then we'll talk about cloud storage. So in our traditional storage, your traditional storage was broadly classified into 4 tiers and 2 different types. So you had something called as volumes, you had something called as vault. In traditional, there were only 2 types, volumes and vaults. Your volumes were part of your hot storage. Your volumes were part of your hot storage, and your vaults were part of your cold storage. Right? So in traditional, there were 4 tiers in which the storage was classified. You had tier 0, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 0, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Your tier 0 and tier 1 is part of your hot storage, which is your, storage where you keep all your frequently accessed data. Your tier 2 and tier 3 is your cold storage where you store all your infrequently accessed data or long-term data, right? Archival data. So as part of your tier 0, tier 1, you had your SSD solid state drive and your HDD, that is your hard disk drive, right? And as part of your tier 2 and tier 3, you still had HDD, that is your hard disk drive, and your cold HDD or tape, right? So this is how storage was broadly classified in your traditional approaches, in your traditional methods, right? The cost of your hot storage is high. The cost of your cold storage is cheap. Your cold storage are cheaply available, whereas your hot storage are pretty costly, right? So archival data is nothing but those kind of data which you don't want to access. For example, I'll tell you, you cleared your university some 10 years back, but if you lose your mark sheet today, can I say you will go back to your university asking for a duplicate mark sheet? Yes or no? Yes. So university will be able to provide you a duplicate mark sheet only if they have stored that data. Agree with me? Without they storing that data, they will not be able to give you duplicate mark sheet. Imagine that university is 100 years old. So can I say they have data for hundreds of years? So those data, they cannot keep it in their hot storage. They cannot keep it in a costly storage, right? They know this data may or may not be used at all. Someone may come up, hey, I lost my mark sheet. Please give me a duplicate mark sheet. Now, out of thousands of students, do you think all 1,000 students going to access this data now in future? No. But if any of those 1,000, any amongst those 1,000 appears and requests for a duplicate mark sheet, university should be in position to give that details. So they keep this kind of data in their cold storage, in a cheap storage. That is your archival. Are we clear? What is your archival, Manoj Kumar? So those kind of data which you are not going to use very frequently, which you are not going to access day in, day out, those kind of data is what you call it as archival data. Now, why should one consider moving from on-premise storage to cloud storage? Why should, as an organization, I should consider moving from on-premises towards the cloud? So understand, okay, I'll make this very simple. In our on-premises, let's assume that I'm an organization xyz.com. I'm purchasing a server with 1000 GB of storage capacity. So if I'm purchasing server today with 1000 GB of server capacity, am I going to use entire 1000 GB right on day one? Am I going to use entire 1000 GB right on day one? No. Obviously, no. It would be over the period of time I'll be using that 1000 GB, right? But while I'm purchasing my server in my on-premises, do I have to pay for entire 1000 GB on day one itself? Do I have to pay for entire 1000 GB on day one itself? Obviously, yes. If I'm purchasing a server right now in my on-premises, and if that server is coming with 1000 GB of storage, I'll have to pay for entire 1000 GB on day one when I'm purchasing that server. Whether I'm going to use entire 1000 GB on day one or in 1 year, it does not make any difference. I have to make upfront payment. Do you all agree with this? Yes, I have to make upfront payment. So that itself is a one bigger challenge in our on-premises. Now, let's assume that I paid upfront. I purchased a server with 1000 GB of storage capacity. I purchased this server with 1000 GB of storage capacity. Now, let us all be very honest. Okay, by the time around 65 to 70% of storage is occupied, can I say our operations team will start raising a red flag telling that, hey, our storage is almost getting full, we should consider upgrading our storage? Yes or no? Obviously, yes. Because see, you and me, we come from the same university, so nothing is hidden there. By the time it reaches 65 to 70%, our operations team start raising a red flag telling that, boss, our storage is getting full. We should consider upgrading our storage. So I go ahead and add additional 500 GB. Now out of 1000 GB, 1500 GB, 700 GB is fulfilled, is occupied. So by the time it reaches again around 1100 GB, my operations team start the same cycle. They start raising red flag. Boss, storage is full. Please upgrade. So if we continue this cycle of upgrade, can I say around 30 to 40% of storage we never use at all? Yes or no? We never use entire 100%. Around 30 to 40% of storage is never used at all. But still, do we pay for it? Yes. So imagine for one server, if 400 GB can be saved. If I have, if I am a big enough organization, I have thousands of server, then can I say the cost which I'm spending unnecessarily is huge? Agree with me? The money which I'm spending is a huge amount. That is first reason. In cloud, you know, you can scale your storage as you want. You don't have to do everything upfront. We'll see demo for all this. Pay as you go model it is in cloud. Then coming to next part of discussion. A lot of inactive data is sitting in your costly storage. So same, taking the example of university. Okay. As I said, I'm a university. I have announced results today. If I'm announcing results today, should I keep this data in hot storage or cold storage? If I'm announcing results today, should I keep this data in hot storage or cold storage? Obviously in hot storage. Obviously in hot storage, because all my users will be accessing these results today. Data would be frequently accessed, right? So I'll keep it in a hot storage. Now, after 15 days, after 20 days, do you think anyone will still be accessing that data? After 15, 20, 30 days, maximum 30 days, do you think anyone still will be accessing that data? No. Obviously, no. Because results announced today, maybe for 10 days, students can delay. 15th day. Or by end of 30th day, I'm very sure students will be accessing their results. They would have seen their results, right? After 30 days, no one is going to come back and access that data. But let us again be very honest. In our on-premises, once data is put up in hot storage, so do we manually move our data to cold storage? Let us all be very honest. Or we let it be there in our hot storage itself. We don't bother to go back and move this data from hot storage to cold storage. Do you all agree with this? Yes or no? That's a human mindset. We let it be there in hot storage itself. Now, can I say this data is become inactive now, which you are continuing to store on hot storage? Because when users are not accessing this data, it's an inactive data. So it is observed that 95% of your data sitting in a costly storage, which should have actually been to move to your cold storage, but still in our on-premises, because of no proper automation in place, no proper SOPs in place, right? 95% of data which is sitting in your hot storage is your inactive data. Third case, data silos or duplicate. Okay, very good example for this is, let's assume that I'm working in an organization xyz.com. Okay, so my manager comes to me and says, Prashant, log into this particular server. There is a file called ABC. make some changes to this particular file. It lists out the list of changes that I'm supposed to make, and it gives me those details, and I'm like, okay, I'll do the changes. So now let us all be honest here also. The very first thing which we would do is we will create a duplicate of that particular file on which manager wants me to make a changes. Yes or no? If manager said make changes on this file called ABC, I'll not directly make changes on that file. I will first create a duplicate copy of that particular file. Agree with me? So I create duplicate copy. I make changes on that duplicate copy. I submit that to my manager, and I'm done for my day. So I leave for the day. Then after me, my colleague comes in the next shift. My managers are reviewed file till then, and my manager goes back to that fellow and says, you know what, I asked Prashant to make this changes. He made those changes, but I still feel these are some additional changes which are needed. Can you please make changes on this? So now what this fellow will do is he will create a duplicate copy of my copy, which I submitted to my manager. Agree with me? He will also create a duplicate copy of the file which I have submitted. Now, if this goes on for some 4-5 times or some 6-7 times, can I say for one master copy we have 10 duplicate copies? Yes or no? Having duplicate copy is not a crime. Having duplicate copy is not a crime at all. But what is a crime is, we don't bother to go back and delete those duplicate file once your master copy is finalized. See, once you have a final version of the document, are you gonna refer the other documents, all the older versions or previous versions? No. But do we bother to go back and delete those files or have a proper version control managed? No. So can I say data duplicates is a bigger problem? Yes. So that is what this is talking about. Your backup process in your on-premises is slow. Your backup process in your on-premises is kind of slow. And obviously we all know, coming from on-premise industry, we all know that if I want to do any kind of backup in our on-premises, it cannot go unannounced. I come in a shift and I think to take a backup today, I cannot do that. It needs to be a well-planned activity. Do you all agree? It needs to be a well-planned activity. It has to go via multiple rounds of approvals, right? It has to go via the change process, the change request, and all of those internal process, right? And all the stakeholders has to be notified. So there are a lot of tasks that needs to be taken care of, right? The activity in itself is a small, but the process oriented that activities are big enough that you can take entire 1 month to plan that activity. The activity is just for 2 hours, but you spend 2 weeks doing all this, process related games, right? And when the backup is being taken, right, at that point of time, it is observed that your application performance is impacted, right? So that in our on-premises, the backup process is slow, and also it sometimes become a risky. But in cloud, it is fast service with low cost and risk. Data protection strategies in your on-premise are not very efficient. I needless to tell, we all coming from industry, we don't have very efficient data protection mechanisms in our on-premises. Sometimes data protection mechanisms are available, but since they are very costly, not every organization is able to afford them, right? So that is also a major challenge. Then in your on-premises, if you have to migrate from one storage to other storage, that requires a lot of cost, and it needs to again be a well-planned activity and all of that. So, but in cloud, it can be easily migrated. Are we all clear? All this data, can I say it is convincing enough for anyone to migrate or consider migrating from on-premise to the cloud? Yes or no? Is it convincing enough? Now, if you feel this is not convincing enough, then let me put up this slide for you. This slide will be definitely convincing enough to everyone. Now, what this slide is all about, this slide is about giving you a projection. If you have to store certain amount of data for certain period of time in your on-premises and storing the same amount of data for same period of time in cloud, what is the difference in the cost which you observe? What is the difference in the cost which is observed? And it is identified the cost of storing same amount of data for same period of time in your on-premises is almost 48% higher than your cloud. The cost of storing same amount of data for same period of time in your on-premises and in cloud, it is observed the cost difference is around 48%. So if the previous slide did not convince you, then I do believe this slide has convinced everyone. Yes. Now talking about your cloud storage. Now cloud storage, it is scalable, secure, durable, managed. It's a way of storing digital data over internet on servers that can be placed in different region, completely managed by AWS, right? It is scalable whenever you want to scale. And it's not necessary that you need to procure entire 1000 GB upfront. Today, if you need only 100 GB, you procure only 100 GB, you pay for that 100 GB. Later, after 2 weeks, after 3 weeks, after 1 month, you need additional storage, you can easily scale. You have proper security mechanisms in place to secure your data. Your data can be deployed in multiple availability zones and regions for the purpose of durability, and the underlying infrastructure is managed by AWS, right? Different storage options on AWS. You have block storage, you have object storage, you have file storage. Block, object, and file storage. These are different storage options on AWS. When we talk about block storage, under block storage, we have EBS, Elastic Block Storage, okay, and Instant Store. Under object storage, we have Amazon S3 and Amazon Glacier. Under file storage, we have Amazon EFS. Now understand each of this one by one. Let's understand them one by one. If we talk about your EBS, your EBS is like your hard disk attached to your server. In our on-premises server, can I say they have their hard disk attached? Yes or no? In our on-premises, in your laptops, in your servers, can I say there is a hard disk attached to your laptops and your servers? Yes. Now, what is the purpose of having this hard disk attached to your laptops or to your servers? What do you think is the purpose? Local storage. Can I say it's not just storage, a local storage? Yes or no? Persistent storage. Can I say it's a persistent storage? When I say persistent storage, it means what? If you have saved something on your hard disk, when you shut down your machine and start your machine again later, tomorrow, a week after, a month later, right? Can I say that data is still available? The data is still persisting. So your hard disk are nothing but your persistent storage which are locally attached to your servers and your machines. Agree with me? Everyone? Yes, no? Yes, fantastic. So in your cloud, can I say you will need your servers also? So if you want servers in cloud, obviously those servers will also require some persistent storage. If you want to save your data in your servers, so those servers will also require some persistent storage. So your EBS is gonna serve that purpose. Your EBS is nothing but kind of hard disk which is attached to your virtual servers in your cloud. Are we clear? Everyone? Your EBS is like an hard disk which is attached to your server on the cloud, which will act as a persistent storage for your servers, right? Next, you have instant store. We will talk about our instant store when we come to our module 4, not right now. I'll discuss about instant store when we discuss our EC2, that is your module 4. So for now, I'm just moving a bit forward. Okay, we'll talk about what your EFS is. Your EFS is nothing but your file storage. Your EFS is nothing but your file storage. Now, what is file storage? Please understand very clearly. In our on-premises, if not right now, sometimes you must have noticed you mount your drives on your machine. You share your C drive, D drive, and all of that, and you mount them on your machines. Have you noticed this? So if I have this particular volume, I can say properties and I can enable sharing. And we can enable sharing. Have you noticed this kind of thing? Mountable drives? Yes, no. You mount your drives within your infrastructure. Now, what is the idea? Why do you mount these drives? Any clues? Any clue? Why do you do this? For shared access. Okay. Easy access, shared access. Right? Let's understand. Let's understand one thing here. Okay. One thing, guys, I saw a feedback telling, the tools for the presentation could have been better. I would actually love to use other tools, but what happened recently, my digital notepad, right? Digital pad, which I use for drawing, which I use for writing, has been damaged. Okay. And owing to lockdown in my particular location where I am put up right now, I don't have access to local market where I can get a new one. And that is the reason why I'm using this paint screen. I hope you don't mind. I'm usually someone who uses OneNote and all of that. Okay. So, but recently my pad got damaged and I don't have a spare one which I can use. Okay. So I hope you don't mind this. The situation is not that I can go out and I can get a digital pad immediately. There's a lockdown in my city. So I'm gonna use this paint till then, till I have a digital pad available with me. So please don't mind me using this paint. I know it sometimes becomes very difficult when I use paint to understand things, but please bear with me till I have my pad coming in. Okay. And again, I'm not sure. I don't have timelines by when I will have that. Once lockdown is open, I don't want to immediately rush to the market. Okay. The situation is not very good in my particular city. So I'll just wait and watch. And once things are stable, I'll get a new one. So in case if it is happening next week, it would be well and good. But if not, I would request your support on this. Okay. So yeah, I was talking about, thank you for understanding in advance, guys. Yeah. So I was talking about this EFS, right? So why do we use this file storage? Why do we mount these drives and all of that? Understand very clearly. Let's assume that I'm an organization XYZ. In my organization, let's assume these are 4 users. Okay. These are some 4 users. And all these 4 users are supposed to work on some same project. Okay. All these 4 users are working on a same project. And since they are working on same project, there is a requirement that they should have access to some common data. There is a requirement that they should have access to some data which is common. Okay. So that they can work independently. Now the data size is of around 1 terabyte. The data size is of around 1 terabyte. So one of the options that all the 4 users should have access to that data simultaneously is on each of this machine, I have a hard disk of around 1 terabyte that is associated with each of this machine. I can associate a hard disk of 1 terabyte, 1.5 terabyte with each of this machine, so that all these 4 users have access to same data at same point of time. Yes or no? This is one solution. Agree with me? Yes. But can I say to store 1 terabyte of data, am I wasting around 4 terabytes of storage? The data size is only 1 terabyte. But since I want it to be available on individual machine, I'm just copying the same data and I'm wasting 4 terabytes of storage to store 1 terabyte of data. Now imagine if this number of users were 400, then can I say just to store 1 terabyte of data, I'm wasting 400 terabytes of storage? Agree with me? So obviously this is not a good idea at all. So to avoid running into this kind of situation, right? We have an option called as, let us have a shared storage. Okay, let us have a shared drive and let all your data be stored in this drive. Let all your data be stored in this drive and let this be mounted on each of this machine. Let this drive be mounted on each of this machine, right? So can I say the purpose is met? The purpose is accomplished, right? And also my cost is saved in this approach. This is your EFS. This is your EFS. Now this sharing has to happen within your infrastructure, obviously not outside your infrastructure. Agree with me? Are we all clear? Can I move forward? What is your EFS all about? It is providing scalable file storage for use with Amazon EC2. EFS file system is used as a common data source for workloads and applications running on multiple instances. So your EC2 is your server here. Instance is individual server. EC2 is a service. Next, talking about your S3. S3 is kind of your Google Drive. It is not exactly your Google Drive, pretty much similar to your Google Drive. Now, can someone tell me what is the advantage of storing your data in Google Drive? What is the advantage of storing your data in your Google Drives or in your OneDrive, all of that? You can access that data anytime, anywhere, any device. Agree with me? You can access data stored there in your Google Drive from any machine, anytime, anywhere. Yes? Now, can you access the same way? Can you access in the same way data which is stored in your hard disk? No, that is not possible. If your data is stored in your hard disk, you cannot access it anytime, anywhere from any device, right? So your S3, which is your simple storage service from AWS, is kind of an internet-based repository where your data can be stored and accessed on your internet. Okay. Just like your Google Drive cannot be mounted on your machines, your S3 can also not be mounted on your machines. Are we clear? What is the difference between your EFS and S3? EFS are mountable drives which can be mounted on your machines. EFS are within your network. Your S3 is over the internet and S3 cannot be mounted. Are we clear? S3 is nothing but your simple storage service. S3 stands for simple storage service. Right? So now moving a bit forward, we talked about this. Then, this is the object storage, block storage, file storage. We talked about, details around it. So S3 is your object storage, where you can access data using your browser, HTTP and HTTPS based access. We'll demo that, don't worry. Your block storage is when you have your EBS volumes, your instance stored, that is part of your block storage, where data is stored, data is stored on your hard disk kind of thing. Your file storage, we spoke about that also, what your file storage is, right? So moving a bit forward, then you have, for the purpose of data migration from your on-premises to cloud, you have your storage gateway and your Snowball. Storage gateway, it is kind of integrating your on-premise with your cloud storage, and Snowball is when you want to move a large amount of data from your on-premises to cloud, then you go ahead and use your Snowball. Okay, so next let us talk about your S3. Let us talk about your S3. So yes, we have some time. So what I'm going to do is I'll demonstrate how exactly we work with it. So all you need to do is say services. Under your services you have storage. Under your storage you have your S3. Under your storage you have something called as S3. Okay, now in this you will see a page like this coming up on your screen. Okay, and here it would say create bucket. Here it would say create bucket. So click on create bucket. What bucket is, you will eventually understand, but for now give a name to this bucket. Give a name to this bucket, and the name of the bucket has to be unique across the globe, not within your AWS infrastructure. For example, right now in my AWS there is no bucket called sample, but still when I try creating, it will say bucket with same name already exists. So what it signifies is the bucket name has to be unique across the globe. Okay, so let's say bucket name here as demo 03, okay, 15 06 21, something like this. Okay, I'm just using the names. Can you please repeat how to create S3 bucket? So that is what I'm doing. Guys, I don't want you to practice in parallel. Once you have your AWS account created, log into your AWS account, and you should find under storage you have S3. Once you click on S3, you will have an option called create bucket. Click on that, you'll land up on this page. Vijay Lakshmi, any doubts? No? Are we good? Guys, please don't try to do in parallel to me. Please don't try to do in parallel to me. Please pay complete attention to my screen so that you understand what I'm doing. Right? Practice all of this offline, not during this session. Okay? So it will ask me to give a name to bucket. I give a name to the bucket. Then I can decide where I want to host my bucket. Whether in Mumbai, Seoul, Osaka, I have choices. I can choose my region. Okay, I can choose any of the region of my choice. So I'm choosing Mumbai because I'm based out of India. So I'm choosing Mumbai region. Once it is done, I'll say create bucket. I'll say create bucket. Now my bucket is created. Now my bucket is created. Click on this. Click on this. Right? Once your bucket is created, click on this. Say upload. So now I'm gonna add a file from my local machine, from my laptop. I'm gonna upload a file to my cloud infrastructure. Let's assume, let's take let me upload this particular file called NIST module 1. Okay, so I'm uploading this file from my laptop to my cloud infrastructure. Now this file is what we call it as object. See, in our on-premises we call them as a file, but once it gets uploaded to your S3, we will call this as an object. And every object will have a unique object URL. Every object will have a unique object URL. Okay, Now, if you try opening this URL on your browser, it should say access denied. Something like this. It should say access denied. Now, if I want this object to be accessible by all of you guys, then what I'll have to do is I'll have to click on permissions. I'll have to click on permissions, and there is something called as block public access. By default, it is set to on. Say edit, disable this, allow public access to your bucket. Okay, so I confirm this. Now, after making these changes also, your object still will say access denied. You'll still not be able to access this. So come back to your bucket. Once again, select this object, say action, say make public. Now, if you try to refresh this on your browsers, I have shared that URL with all of you. So can I expect everyone to quickly refresh this? You should see the PDF coming up. Do you all see a similar outcome on your screen? On your browsers? When you try accessing, do you all see similar outcomes? Amazing, right? There was a file which is available in my local machine. I uploaded it to my AWS infrastructure, and you guys sitting at different locations of the world, you're able to access that data. Yes or no? And all of this did not take a long amount of time. In fraction of minutes, we have done this. Agree with me? So now understand one more thing which I'm going to highlight here. Okay, pay attention to that. Now I'll say upload. I'm going to upload one more file. I'm uploading one more file. Okay, I say upload. Now this is also referred to as an object. So again, this object will have its own unique URL. Okay, this object will have its own unique URL. So here it is, the URL of this particular object. Though your bucket was allowed public access, it does not mean that all the object in this bucket will be publicly accessible. Though your previous object was accessible, it does not mean that all your objects should be accessible in the bucket. Why I'm trying to highlight is, let's say in this bucket, I'm storing some close to 100 files. Out of these hundreds of files, I want only 2 files to be publicly accessible. Remaining 98, I don't want publicly accessible. Is that possible? Yes, very much possible. Now both these objects are sitting in the same bucket, but one is accessible and other one is not accessible. If I want to make other one accessible, then I'll have to select this, say action, say make public. Say make public. Once I make public, you should be able to access the other file also. So are we all clear? Per object level access we can define. That's a kind of security. Am I making sense with this, guys? As the file was in local, we uploaded through the options, but in our organization where the files are in different hosts, how will we upload? So either you upload it manually, or you use some programs, some software, some applications of yours, right, to upload this file. Or if you have your infrastructure in cloud itself, right, then you can use this as a storage to store your data. Are we clear? So there was a question in our current scenario. Please understand. Okay, in our current scenario, There was a question that, the file was available in my laptop. I quickly uploaded it. But question was, in our on-premise infrastructure, in our, our client infrastructure, all of that, we have data located at different locations. So should we follow the same approach of uploading? That was the intent of question. Okay. So let me tell you, you can automate this process. You don't have to manually upload. Okay. You can automate this process. You can upload it using your programs and scripts. So AWS will not have any service to copy from different servers. No, there is no such options available from AWS. You will have to, because see, I'll tell you a very simple case. How would AWS know what data you would like to move? Yes or no? See, in my on-premises, I have 1000 GB of storage. Now, out of 1000 GB, which particular data I want to move to cloud, will AWS be able to gauge that? Or will AWS be able to decide that? No, right? As an organization, it is your responsibility to define that. Agree with me? So AWS does not have any such provision where it will copy from different servers directly. No. You need to define what you want to move. This S3, can it be used to upload DB file systems? See, you can store. There is a difference between storing and using it. I can store anything on S3. I can store anything on S3. But will I be able to make those changes on the DB file system here on S3? No. Are we clear? Like I can upload a Word document. But if I want to make any modification on that Word document, will I be able to do that on S3 itself? No. Am I making sense? So that is the idea. S3 upload only from local. I think I just informed this information. It is not only from local. You can move data, you can store data from anywhere. It is not necessary only from local. Please understand. You can have your data uploaded to your S3 from anywhere using your applications and stuff. You can configure your applications also to save the data to your S3 bucket. Are we good? S3, is it always read only to others? No, we will talk about the permissions, more aspects of permissions in our tomorrow's session, because today I don't think we have enough time. We hardly have 2 minutes left. So I don't want to, disturb your schedule and your plans. So is there any size limitation? Okay, that's a very valid and good question. So let me tell you one thing, guys, park your questions for one moment. Let me complete my information. I'll take all your questions. Okay. So for different AWS service, which we are going to discuss, right? Every service will have certain limitations. So I'm going to tell you what is a common approach to find out maximum, minimum limits and all of that for every service. All you have to do is open your Google, right? On your Google, you need to say AWS followed by name of the service. Right now I'm saying S3 and followed by the term limitation. In case if I want to know limitations of EC2, I'll say AWS EC2 limitation. If I want to know limitation of EBS, I'll say AWS EBS limitation. So can I ask everyone to follow this practice? Because remembering numbers for every service will not be possible. Even for you, as you learn more, right? You will see that, there are so many services, there are so many numbers to remember, and you will not be able to remember all of them, right? So the best approach to find out limitations, in case if you're interested, just say this. Okay. Here you will find all the details on what is the maximum size of the bucket, what is the maximum limit of the data that can be stored. All those details are available in the relevant AWS document. So can I expect everyone to follow this practice rather than, we ask the same question for every service? Because my idea is I want you guys to be more and more independent, not being dependent on me. If this is a general information, do a quick search and you're good to go. You don't have to wait for me to respond. Okay, this is the limit, that is the limit. right? And as we progress, you will see for every AWS services, there are limitations. So remembering numbers for every service will be very difficult, right? So this is the approach I want you to take. Now there is another question which someone asked me. You know, are all 175 plus services in AWS, are they for free? No, they are not for free. Now, to help you understand what all is for free and how much it is for free and for how long it is for free, once you have your free tier account created, I want you guys to access this particular URL. Okay. In this particular URL, you can bookmark this URL basically. Okay. In this particular URL, you have details on every AWS service, which is for free, how much it is for free, and how long it is for free. Are we good with both this thing, limitation and your free tier limit? Yes. So may I expect or may I request everyone going forward, if you have queries around these two things, what is the limitation of this particular service, or is it for free? So may I expect you to browse through this websites or these URLs? Yes, please. Thank you. Please do that, because that will help you even, improve your searching skills. Searching on Google is also a skill. Okay. If you know how to search on Google, that is a bigger skill, because everything is available on internet, but people don't know how to search, right? Okay. Do we call Amazon S3 bucket using script? Do we have unique key? I'll talk about all of this. We can access your Amazon S3 using scripts and all of that. Okay. And obviously that will require some method to do. So definitely there is a provision for all of that. We'll discuss. Don't worry. Are we all good till here? Now, if anyone has any question, any doubts, any queries, please do let me know. Okay, now there's an very important question. Good that you asked me. Any book which you recommend? Any book which you recommend to practice or learn AWS? So let me tell you, don't purchase any book. I will give you book for free. I will give you more than enough information towards the end of this course. I'll share you some close to 4-5 books which will help you gain more detailed insight. So not only your associate level examination, even till your specialty level examination you can attempt. Okay, I'll give you relevant book materials. Is that good enough? So no need to spend your money purchasing the same book. Like if you want, you can go ahead and purchase, but I don't want you to unnecessarily spend your money, because eventually I'm going to share a book material with all of you. Okay. So there's no point in unnecessarily wasting your money. I'll share book for your fundamentals, book for your associate levels, book for your developer levels. So all those books I'm going to share. So wait till the end of this course. You'll have all those materials coming to you, right? So now if anyone has any questions, doubts, queries, please do let me know. If not, that's it from my side for our today's session. I will continue further on storage in our tomorrow's session, right? So today we saw on how to create your bucket. We talked about fundamentals of your storage on cloud and what are the challenges in your on-premises, right? So one thing which I have noticed that a lot of you guys have not marked your feedback. We have huge strength, but we don't see people marking your feedbacks. Humble request to each and everyone, please do mark your feedbacks. And if you enjoyed my session, feel free to mark it as an excellent, because excellent is the only positive feedback which is considered. Anything apart from excellent is considered to be a negative feedback, right? So please do mark your feedbacks without fail, because that will eventually help you enhance your learning experience and also help me, provide the best, so that I get to understand what is going good. If you feel that something is going good, I can continue the same way if you mention in your feedback. If you feel something is not going good, I can work upon that and we can fix that gap, and we can improve on those areas. So please do provide your feedbacks without fail. Yes. So thank you so much. That's it from my side for today's session. I'll see you all tomorrow. Till then, bye bye. Take care. Signing off for the day, guys.